Okay, so that really is everybody in. First of all, then, great. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Zoom launch event where we're coming together to celebrate the publication of The Joybringers, the latest book from the pen, camera, and creative mind of Karin Celestine. We're delighted, as I say, you can join us and hope you enjoy the next hour or so as we chat to Karin about the book, the series, and hopefully hear them read from it a bit later. We also hope there'll be a minute or two for questions. So as we go along, if a question occurs to you, please feel free to pop it in the chat. And if there's time, we'll maybe try and answer a few of them either as we go along or right at the end. So let's press on and say hello to Karin, the reason we're gathered here tonight. Hello.
Oh,
Another book. Here we are again.
here we are again.
I suppose the obvious place to start is let's start talking about the book itself. Do you want to begin by telling us what it's all about?
Yeah, so this one is centered around summer. So it's midsummer, and it's the opposite of the Lightbringers, which we'll talk a bit about later on. But it's this one centered around the midsummer solstice and that whole thing of when the earth's dancing and laughing flowers, and the theme of kind of joy and fun and bonfires and those lovely summer evenings, picnics and games and laughter, and lots of sort of sun, fiery elements to the book. Yeah, I think a while ago, Cecilia and I were talking, who Cecilia helps me sort of edit the books, and we were talking about how you could almost link them to the elements, the books, and that this one was definitely going to be the fiery book. So that kind of thing of sparks and fire, really, summer heat. So the story really centers around little small beauties, and this is something I can see Jacqueline in the thing there, that Jacqueline, who the book's partly dedicated to, she started this thing on social media that we celebrated small beauties in our days, and the tribe membership group that I have, we do it every week as well, that we notice these just small joys in our days. So even doesn't matter how difficult your day is, and I know sometimes from my own experience that when things are tough, actually finding those little joys in our days really helps, and it can help other people as well by saying about them. So the often, we've got our head down, and, we're thinking things are terrible, but then, we can stop and something just catches our eye, and it could just be a beautiful leaf, or, if you hear a cuckoo, or you see a deer, or you get a text from a friend, it can just make you stop for a minute, and, it's a little moment in your day that just brightens that day up. Or you can hear, I mean, I heard a wood pigeon today, and it immediately just sparks straight back a memory of being a little kid sitting in my garden in a summer's evening. It's those little memories and things that they just pop up everywhere. And things just fall in front of us like a feather and stops us in our tracks. And I was kind of having this thought about, why does that happen sometimes and not others? Why do some things sort of spark a memory more than others? And why does that, that one particular leaf that you see sort of really stop you and think, oh, wow, and yeah, that's that sort of thought of, yeah, it sparked the story basically. So
Yeah.
we can do them for other people as well. So there's this one element of, I suppose, in a way, the book's got these two elements. There's a kind of hiding and finding, so we can do them for each other as well. And, just smiling at someone. Or there's that beautiful poem, I can't remember who wrote it, but there's a line in it that just says, I like your hat. And it's about these little things that we say to each other, bless you when someone sneezes. And that thing of just affecting someone else's day by just a small thing, you know, and it can really change you and your mood. Like if if you hear a group of little kids just laughing and giggling, it brightens you, it raises a smile in you, and it's that kind of infectious thing of, I suppose it's like that butterfly effect, isn't it, in a way that that joy just passes on, and then it changes how you interact with someone else. If you've had that and it's brightened you a bit, then you kind of smile at someone else and on it goes. So there was that kind of element. And then also I kind of wanted to talk about it being okay to be joyful, which might sound a bit odd, but and this thing of joy being slightly different to happiness. We can have this thing of you must always be happy, and positive, and sometimes that can be a bit too much. And I don't think joy is quite the same as happiness, and happiness has got this sort of frantic thing that we can't always be happy. It's too much of a heightened emotion, whereas that joy to me resides in a slightly different realm. And I hear there's a lot of people at the moment saying, oh, well, I was going to, say hurrah that, something good's happened to me. But, oh, I feel so bad. I shouldn't be celebrating this when there's so many bad things going on in the world and everything's so terrible. How can I possibly be happy about things? And, we almost, are told that you should be kind of dragged down by the weight of everything that's awful. And for me, I think actually it's really important that we celebrate that joy. We know those terrible things are there, and if the whole world being dragged down by it isn't actually going to affect it. You can do something positive to help that situation, fundraise or protest or whatever it is, but that act of being joyful and celebrating your own little joys, I think is really important. And I think it sort of passes on as well. And so for me, there's a difference between saying, I don't care if everyone's, really suffering. I'm going to just go out and have a good time anyway. That's a very different way of looking at things. But if you think of what I tried to put in the book was this idea that it's almost being joyful in service to others, that you're having fun and being happy is creating those sparks of joy for other people to find, and that will raise them as well. And I see this on social media sometimes, particularly Twitter, which is quite toxic, when people get sort of piled on and bullied about things, but, I know a couple of people on there who they just carry on being utterly joyful about everything. They never react to anything. And I just think this is such a glorious thing to do. They're just like, I'm having a fabulous day today. And it's a bit like, still I rise, that thing of you can say what you want, but I'm just going to be joyful anyway. You're not going to affect it. And yeah, I think the intention's important, and it's a different way of thinking about it. So it's that idea of being a joy bringer to other people as well as finding them yourself. There's a two-way street there. You can't just take, you have to give a bit as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because my first way into I worked with you on the text a little bit and sort of doing a little bit of editing, and I mean I've spoken to you about this before, that for me with your texts the key is finding a central idea, which normally happens sort of when I'm halfway through reading it and I suddenly go aha, and then all of a sudden everything around it seems to fall into place and there's a nice structure. And for me it was that idea of perception, about seeing something every day or something you see every day, but almost seeing it for the first time. And in a way, then you'll never see it in the same way again. That it'll change your perception of it. I think you've talked there about the external, about bringing joy to others, but there's a lot here about bringing having joy into your life as well, and to be almost to be on the lookout for it and don't miss it. Am I right in that
Oh,
summation?
absolutely. And that's why we, like we do in the group, we have a little thing every week. I put up a thing that says small beauties for the week, and people write their own small beauties in there. And it sort of makes you, and I think particularly when sometimes, people will sort of say, oh, I'm having a terrible time at the moment. I can't find any. And I think that's the time when you should really look for them. And you can always find them. And it's really important, it really, yeah, it's important for us, to look after ourselves as well as others. And I think those little things are so important. We talk about all this. I remember when I was really ill and people were talking about all these like bucket lists, swimming with dolphins and, skydiving. And I was thinking, actually, if I survive through this, what I really wanted to do were actually very small things, and they, in a way, are the big things. And that thing of just seeing just put your head up and stop just rushing to the next thing and the next thing, and your life is just passing you by because one day, but actually just look up. I mean, I can hear that. I hope, well, maybe you can. The pigeons are on the roof at the moment and they're running up and down it and they just sound hilarious, and it just makes me smile when they do that. You hear this pat 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 pat, and little things like that. It just, yeah, they brighten your day. And I think when you talk about others, we need to look after ourselves as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I managed to navigate that question without you asking me about my guitar playing, which is
That's coming. I've been teasing Matthew that I got a really nice email from Matthew one day because I sent off some of the text, and he sent me an email saying, I get it now. I get it. I get what the book's about. And I was like, yes. And he was telling me about a song that, it sparked that little spark of sort of joy and inspiration in him. And I've been teasing him that I'm going to say, and now Matthew's going to play the guitar for us all, tell us all about his song.
that really would bring the evening to a crashing end. I mean, this is the third in a series of four. Do you want to talk a little bit about how it sort of, I've written down here how it fits in, but I mean, that doesn't really come close to describing what's going on here. Does it mirror the others? Does it stand alone? Do you have to do you have to read them in order, in sequence? How does it all work?
So with this one, I had this image of, well, initially it was like the sparks with bonfires and the foxes sort of, I had this because they've got black paws. I was thinking these foxes with their sooty paws, from collecting up sparks from bonfires, and of course foxgloves, that come out. They're just starting to come out now. I mean, it's just, summer foxgloves. It had to be that fiery, foxy kind of fun there. And it sort of morphed into more general sparks, particularly after a conversation about not wanting people to be setting fire to stuff, to create sparks of joy. But um, I wanted that. I wanted the opposite of the Lightbringers. So all four books are, you don't have to have read, you can just read one and it is a little package in itself, but they've all got, I mean, probably more than most people would notice, and probably more than is I don't know what the word is. I think I put so much sort of tweaking and thought into them that I don't know that anybody else ever finds, but they are a huge reflection of each other. So the winter books have a real stillness to them, a sort of quiet inwardness that we would have with winter. They're very calm and still. And I think we've forgotten how to live with the seasons a little bit. I think a lot of people here today haven't, and notice that in the winter we tend to go more inward and more quiet, and the book sort of reflects that, whereas summer is very much, it's out there, it's sort of outward joy. So this book is the opposite to the Lightbringers, which is the midwinter solstice book, and this is the midsummer solstice. So they're the poles of the year. So this book is particularly focused on the Lightbringers, but there are nods to the wish gatherers in there as well. There's little hints. So I wanted this book to be the opposite. I wanted to kind of tip the Lightbringers upside down and sort of bring that complete, summer joy to it. And whereas the Lightbringers, there's this thing of being very steadfast in your task, and it's almost quite reverential, that book. So I wanted this one to just be kind of quite playful and silly as the polar opposite to it. So I mean, ridiculously for me, I was trying to think of a character and I couldn't think of a single one, and then I realized I needed a whole host of characters for it, which in one way is daft because I've then got to make them all. But I decided to go for this chaos of this whole cast of little tricksters, who are playing hide and seek basically, and hiding things here, there, and everywhere across the whole world, for us to find. And then, but you can see little hints. So there are phrases that link to the Lightbringers. If you've read the other books, you'll spot them. And I quite like that idea that they're almost little hidden sparks of joy within the book, that it's that if you know kind of thing, that when people are reading it, they're like, I remember that phrase, that's in the Lightbringers. I try to include little bits. So there's like sometimes in this book, which is from the wish gatherers, and there's the bit about the earth, the kind of winter, it reflects back. So it, like, the Lightbringers starts with the first page of the Lightbringers is the midsummer solstice, and they're dancing and they have a bonfire because it's the midsummer, and it works its way into midwinter. And this book starts with midwinter and brings it up to summer. So there's a weaving and a connection all the way through them, but you can read them as just a separate thing. But I quite like dropping little, there's all kinds of little hidden things in there that people might find, they might never find them, but if they do, I hope it just brings a little smile, that someone notices a little something in there. That, yeah, I suppose every book's got a spark of joy in it, some little hidden things.
I think as you thread your way through the seasons, there's always echoes of other times and other periods of the year. I mean, how many times have you stopped sort of, I don't know, mid-March, and all of a sudden a smell or a sensation has reminded you of November or something, those echoes rattle around. So in that way, your books are representing that as well. So this is publication day. This is the day where it's launched onto the world, coming ready or not. How do we get here? What's the process for creating this book?
I was thinking the other day that when Matthew and I were talking a little bit about, what we might talk about today, and the amount of work that goes into this book is completely ridiculous. And, talk about value for money, honestly. I mean, when I think, books are, this is a different topic, but they are so cheap for what they are, for a book like this. When I think of making an animal and selling it, and then how much has gone into this book. So, for this one, it probably started 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, 2 years ago. So the way I do them is it takes a long time, and it's not simple at all. And sometimes I think, why do I do this? This is nuts. So, I have an idea of the story, but then for me, the illustration is a big part of it as well. And because the animals are photographed in the season, it's quite tricky because I had to photograph the foxes and the animals when the foxgloves were out in the woods. And we had a really, really terrible summer when there was clouds and it rained a lot. And I kept kind of looking, going, these foxgloves are going to go over and I won't have got the pictures taken. And it was getting quite stressful. And you could sort of go, well, you write a story and you illustrate it and, and edit it, and that's that. But actually, for me, I have to make the animals to start with. And for them to work in the scale of when you're photographing something with a foxglove, they're actually quite tall flowers. So, I can't do my usual little tiny animals like this. I have to make slightly bigger animals so you can see them next to the foxgloves. So there's a lot of, I don't know if people can see behind me, but I've got some of them behind me. So the foxes are there and the pine marten, they're quite big. So make them, they take forever. Here's Grandmother Badger, who appears throughout the book as well. And the illustrating of this book was very hard work for so many reasons, partly the weather. The day I wanted to go out and photograph her, it was the sun finally came out. I'd found a spot in the woods where the badgers live, and I thought, right, she's going to be sitting there sewing, in this particular bit of the woods. And I sort of went up to the woods with my bag with her and my camera and everything. And there was a sort of day out for young archaeologists because there was like the remains of a little house next to where I wanted a photograph. And they were all there with their little clipboards, just hordes of them. And it was like, oh, for goodness sake, the one sunny day we had. So I was like, what am I going to do now? And, going around the corner. And then actually, this is a little sideline, but this book has had so many, it's almost like the book comes to life. There have been so many little funny, tricky moments with it and joyful moments as well. So I was kind of like despairing that I couldn't take the photos of her. And I walked around the corner and I thought maybe there's a little spot at the top of the hill there where there's some old fallen trees and nice tree trunks. And I thought maybe I can make do with finding something there, but it's not the same, And I got around the corner and there was a stag just standing there next to this tree stump that I had in mind that maybe she could sit at the foot of the tree stump, which is the one in the book. I've never seen a stag. I know there are deer in those woods, but there was a huge, great big stag just standing there next to this tree, just looking at me. And then it just walked off into the woods. And I was like, okay, well, there's a sign. And I took the photos there, and actually they worked so much better. And also I made in the book, there's little sparks so each animal has a little spark that I made, these little tiny sort of copper gilded sparks, and I'd go out and put the spark and the animal there and take the photos and pick them up and put them back in the little box and go home. And seriously, every time I got home, there were sparks missing. I never came home with as many as I went out with. They kept disappearing, and it was just making me laugh after a while because I had to remake them. I was like, I've got no sparks. I had to make more. And I went out again and only 2 came back. And I was just like, it was like the book they were actually hiding them. You're taking photos of animals hiding sparks for other people to find. And they were actually hiding. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So yeah, lots of making. And this is the sort of daft level of detail that I go into that I don't know that, I mean, in a way, it doesn't matter for the book, but I think some of that love and care that you put in, it has to come out somehow in the images. But I mean, for example, Badger here, she's made from the woods that I photographed her in. So her nettle shawl, I picked the nettles and she spun them. I actually spun some nettles and made them into cordage, crocheted this. Her basket of cloth that she's got, I could have just bought little strips of fabric, but I actually gathered plants and dyed them so they were like a badger would, you know, if a badger was going to get cloth, that she, you know, they're from hawthorn and little plants around the woods there. So she's got a basket of plant dyed fabric. And I mean, nobody probably even sees inside that basket, but I think it does make a difference. If it was garish bright pink, it kind of wouldn't work. I did get a little bit obsessed then. So her basket is actually made from the plants up in the woods. There's some birch there from a tree that fell over. She's got a mug. I'd made her a mug and I was like, do you know what? The mug is the only thing that's not from the woods. So I actually went and dug some clay up in the woods and I made her little mug. So she's completely off the place. Her sewing needle is from a antler that was found up at, well, Kathy's dog found it actually up in the woods there. So there's a lot of little tiny details that the baskets that the foxes carry. I wove those from plants that I collected, you know, so it's a very long, slow process just for the illustration. And yeah, you'll never see it, but I think it's important for me. And I think I don't know. I think it does come through in the book somewhere. You know.
Yeah, I think you might not see it, but you certainly sense it. I think you can sense when something's authentic and when it isn't. And I think, looking at what you make as well as your books and the way they come across, there's an authenticity there. There's a, you're not just writing stories here, you're writing what you believe, and you're imparting your worldview. And through the creatures you're making, you're representing that in authentic detail. And I think that that certainly must come through in a sense and a feel of what is there. I mean, I spoke to you earlier about the sort of style, the photography, and the sort of the almost the live action. Sorry, I'm not sure what the technical term is. I mean, I grew up with sort of Harry the Hamster and Tales from the Riverbank. And this idea that sort of you would have real animals, acting out parts, you maybe occasionally see the finger coming from the side to prod the hamster along a little bit. I mean, it's a style that was gone a bit out of popularity, out of vogue. I mean, is it something that you would like to see back, or is it just something you naturally do? This is just how you see a book looking?
Well, I think for me, it's just how I do it. And I think that's how I came to books in the first place, was they actually I kind of came into it back to front, because it wasn't that ambition, I'm going to be an author when I grow up, but I made the animals, and I mean, I was making the animals to sell them and then telling little stories about them, because to me that's more fun than, I mean, I've always told stories anyway, but it kind of, I wasn't going to, if I'm going to write books about my characters, that in a way there is no other way for me to illustrate them apart from photographing them. I suppose, that it kind of has to be like that because it's about these characters. I mean, there are books that, there was a story that I thought of and I thought, I can't illustrate it. It's not possible to do with felted animals, just, so I suppose that's limiting in one way, but in another way, it does make them different. And I know it's not the fashion, but there's plenty of fashion out there, and I think I've got my little niche corner of what I do. And it would be nice to see more. I think I'd love to see people experimenting a bit more with different. I mean, there are some people who use photography and overlay on them and cartoons and do a mixture, or set up sets and photograph things. But I think there's a lot more to be done there. And yeah, there used to be a lot like that. I mean, I remember having a book of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears that were kind of like she was a doll and there were like little teddy bears almost, and they were photographed on little sets. It was quite strange, but yeah, it would be nice to see a bit more of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, I'm just happy to do my own little corner here.
Well, you say your own little corner. I mean, you had collaborators with this one, didn't you?
Yes, I'm a great one. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, tell us about your fun and games with your neighbour.
Yeah, so I don't know if she's here or not. I can't see, but so Kathy I've been working with for I can't remember a couple of years or so now, I think. And yeah, we sort of discovered uh well, I discovered that she sewed the most exquisite little things when we actually got talking to each other, and I was like, oh, could you just? And so we've been kind of collaborating on the animals that I sell, make and sell, where she'll make so little accessories for them. And I'd asked her if she could do, because I had this idea of Grandmother Badger sort of sewing all the little small joys that people, that are seen, she records them all on her quilt, so throughout the book, she's just sewing away. And and then at the end there'd be this finished quilt there. But when I asked Kathy if she could do some embroidery for me, I had this image that she would just do like a little scrap, like here's one of the there's a little bag there, something like that, with a few little patches, and that I could sort of stick them together so they looked like a half finished quilt. But Kathy, being Kathy, who does everything sort of exquisitely, um, kind of disappeared off, and then sort of went, "For this is quite hard work," and it took her a month, a whole month of work. And so, when we think about the book and how much work has gone into this book, um, Kathy came back with the most exquisite piece of embroidery, which is the Grandmother Badger's quilt there, with all the little small joys on it. I mean, it's so beautiful. I'm so nervous that, I'm going to spill my tea on it or something. I actually keep it wrapped in a cloth because it's just so beautiful. And it's got the plant dyed linens on, and, cottons on it, and the themes from the book. So there's the pine cones for the pine martens, and there's all those little joys there, the bulrushes from so the whole thing links to the book. Just, I mean, it was a million times more than I expected. And I mean, it just made the book even better. We had a lot of sort of dashing backwards and forwards because I needed to take some photos of Grandmother Badger like sewing in the book, like mid quilt. So she'd sort of run across the road with, a sort of couple of strips before she'd sewn them together. And I'd go out and like, oh, it's not raining, bring it over. I'd run up to the woods and photograph it, and then run back, give her it back, and she'd sew the next bit. So we had this sort of backwards and forwards of getting this just incredibly beautiful quilt done. And she helped me come up with this idea of, because I wanted this sort of upside down chaos in the book rather than that stillness of the light bringers. So, it was quite nice to sort of talk through with Kathy about ideas of how to illustrate that. And we came up with this idea of like in the book, and I think this is one of my favorite things about the book, is the end papers. So at the very beginning of the book, you've got the Grandmother Badger. She's sitting at the beginning of the book, spinning her thread, and she basically walks through the book, leaving her detritus. I had this image of this sort of shambolic old badger just sort of dropping bits of fabric behind her, and needles and thread, and just scattering things. And she just walks through the entire book, and then at the end of the book, you see she kind of walking off the book. She's right on the edge of the page, disappearing off with her quilt. So that was a really nice, I was so grateful for that. It's that sparking ideas off each other, when you can talk to someone and go, oh yes, and then I could do that. And that's what's so helpful about what, you know, you get some people who are like, no, I must do it all myself, but I love the sort of collaborative element in that. I mean, we had Kathy doing the quilt and like those bottom, you know, the bits sort of scattered. Pam as well doing her customs in the back of the book, the folk customs. And she came across that quote about the midsummer sparks in London, and I was just shrieked with joy when I saw it, because we've got midsummer bonfires is my tradition, you know, from Sweden and the sort of Germanic countries. They all have, you know, midsummer bonfires. But I suddenly did this, oh my goodness, does anyone else have it? Am I just, you know, is this a thing? And then I heard she found this quote about, you know, London, all the sparks flying with midsummer fires. And I was like, oh, that's just fabulous. So the very first book we worked on, it was kind of back to front that I sent her the book and was like, can you find themes to fit with what I've written? You know, so can you write about the Mary Lloyd, and could you do a few other things? But now we know it's happening and we're working together. There's a nice little back and forth there. So I can ask her, say, this is the kind of theme for the book. It's midsummer, you know, probably a fiery kind of theme. She'll go away and say, oh, you know, this is what I know about it. And then I go, oh, that bit links really nicely to this in the book. And so there's a bit of backwards and forwards. And I can add things in, like one of the books has got the animals doing the horn dance, which is the Bromley horn dance, which she told me about. And you can weave it in there. So it's nice to have that little sort of, what do you know? Oh, okay, you know, and sort of, yeah, I sort of sneak them in the story, maybe even just in a picture or just a line of text. And then also we've got Cecilia, who helps me edit the words. She knows, I know Cecilia's here, I saw her. And Cecilia's very good at knowing what I want to say. She knows me well enough that sometimes she's like, what you're trying to say here is this. And, you know, if you just change that sentence order around, you'd be, and it's like, oh yeah, I did. I was trying to say that, but I didn't realize I was, you know. So, I mean, this book in particular, I think we picked through it and, you know, all that attention with the illustration we have with the words as well. And I think some people think that writing, you know, a short picture book is easier in a way because there's not many words, but they have to be just right. If you've not got many words, I mean, if you've got one line of text, it's got to be spot on. So there's a lot of just how does that sound? And I will read it out loud to hear how it sounds, because that's really important, you know, how it reads. And then, so we did a lot of backwards and forwards, and what about this and what about that? And then Matthew as well, because although Matthew's not officially always the editor for Graffeg, I really value his opinion, because again, the difference of working with people who know you and know what you're trying to say, it's absolutely golden to have someone helping you edit a book who knows you and what you're trying to do. So Matthew and I had a few conversations as well, and publishing's always last minute, you know, so there we are, kind of like, you know, you finish the book in October and then like nothing happens for 3 months, and then the week before it goes to print, it's like, oh, actually we need to talk about this. And the day before it goes to print, I seem to remember Matthew phoning me up and me pulling into a lay-by sitting in my car having a conversation about this 2 lines of text that just weren't quite right. Nobody thought they were quite right. And me going, I'm in the car, you're going to have to read them out to me. So there's me sitting in the car on the phone with Matthew going, well, it says this at the moment, what about this? And we played around and then got it. You know, there's that little spark of just, that's it. That's what it needs to be. So there's been a lot of collaboration there, but so much work. So, I mean, and then never mind, you know, Joanna having to get all the photos on the page. And there's another one where I go, Joanna, if I took a photo of the night sky and sort of sent you a bit of Kathy's stitched moon and some little spark flies, do you think you could kind of somehow, you know, she's like, yeah, no problem. And there's a lot of work. They should be 10 times what they cost books. You know, all the editing and the design work and the cover. We had a bit of an argument about the cover because, and I'm so glad we did, because I think it's so beautiful now. I mean, even though it's mine, you know, I'm a bit like, oh, you know, when a book comes, but I was just like, gosh, that's really lovely. So yeah, lots of collaboration, lots of work. I think books should be 100 quid each, really.
Well, that bit about me talking to you in the lay-by and last minute and deadlines, that probably says more about my working practices than it does about the publishing industry generally. So let's not tar all publishers with the same brush. Just in case any publishers are out there listening. I think it's probably time for you to have a little breather now. The book is officially available from today, but I know some people have been getting advance copies from that have ordered sort of special pre-publication copies from you, and you've been getting quite a lot of very positive feedback and some lovely, lovely comments. So we thought it might be quite nice, and I hope this is going to work sound-wise as well as pictures. Um, we think it'd be quite nice just to get a little bit of a taste of what people out there are saying already about this book. So, Daniel, if you can, there we go.
They truly touched my heart. The book is a triumph and a joy in itself, living up to the title and sharing its special message with everyone who will read it over time.
Absolutely beautiful book. Every time I read it, touches my soul, makes me cry a little. Can't wait to keep rereading. Definitely an amazing book, number 3.
The Joy Bringers is such a magical, comforting book. It saw me through a very anxious night earlier this week and filled me with hope and peacefulness and, of course, joy.
A truly warm and magical story that will bring joy into your day.
Another magical book by Karin. It's a small reminder for us to look for the small beauties in everyday things.
Hello, I just wanted to quickly say how much I've loved this new book from Karin Celestine. As ever, bringing hope, joy, and magic into our lives. Beautiful, beautiful book.
Well, there we are. I think from what was coming across to me anyway, was that it's had a very positive first few readings at least. Very briefly, because I know you haven't actually really got going on this yet, or perhaps you have and you're keeping it from me, but Joybringers is book 3. What comes next?
So next is Spring, which is the last in the series. I'm having to take the pictures now because we've got another bit of chaos, because it has bluebells in it and spring flowers, and because of the time, how long it takes to do a book, I have to illustrate it this spring, so it's ready for next year. And of course it's been raining and blah, 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 you know, so it's been a bit tricky, and I haven't actually, this one's been a bit odd because I've been in the middle of promoting this book and working on this one. I've got the story and I've got the outline of the story, but I haven't actually written it properly yet. So I'm illustrating the book before before I've written it in a kind of strange way. So I know what the story's going to be and I know roughly what's going to be on each page, but I haven't actually written the text to go with it. So it's almost like a little storyboard, but I've had to take the photos now while we've got spring, because already the bluebells are over and we're into foxgloves and we're into summer. So it's a bit of a back to front one. It's about spring, of course, and rebirth and new beginnings and birth. There will be a birth in it, and maybe not quite a death, but old age and young and old as well, because again it's that reflection, of there's new growth. Always there has to be the old for the new to come forward. And gifts as well. So this one will be a reflection of the Wish Gatherers, the autumn book. It's the opposite to that one. It's a rounding off, although it will be a book in itself like the others. It is the end of the series, because there's a book for each season. So there is a little bit of a rounding off. And if you've read the other three, there will be references that will hopefully make you smile, and there will be characters that you recognize as well, and a couple of little sneaky cameo appearances as well that you might just go, oh, when you see it. So yeah, it's a kind of rounding off of them all. And yeah, I think for me, the Celts always had this thing of the year starting in the darkness, that, we always talk about the new year with spring, starting, but they started in the winter, when everything goes to sleep. And I kind of really like that idea that this series started in the similar kind of way, that you start with the rest and the winter, and then out of that resting comes the new growth. So we're finishing with what some might think is the beginning, but we're finishing with spring and the rebirth. So there is, it's about gifts and birth, but there's also something very old in there. And I will give you, for being so fabulous and all coming along tonight, I don't know if you can see, but this is one of the central characters, a very old little shrew. So you can be the first to have noticed the little shrew. So we will all be working on this book, so it's ready for this time next year.
And I mean, just in case anyone's worried, something's just popped into my head, because of course that will then be book 13 that you'll have published with Graffeg. And I remember, because I think there are 9 small books, 3 big ones at the moment, and that'll be the 4th one, so that'll be 13 altogether. But you saying we're finishing off with that one, I seem to remember when you first started doing books with Graffeg, and me asking you, did you have any ideas? I think you sent me a list of 38. So I'm not sure we're going to be running out of ideas anytime soon. But yeah, let's not just say finishing off too loudly just yet.
Well, we're finishing off the Tales of the Year series, which is a series of 4. That's not necessarily to say there will be no other books. We might, I don't know, we haven't talked about this yet. I mean, the original one was the little books, and I mean, we might have to go back and do some more of those. And I mean, Bert is a living legend.
Oh, absolutely.
He has his own fan club.
And who doesn't love Bertram? And also, I mean, you've got this newfound status as author. You don't want to brag about it, I know, but you this month are Library Author of the Month in Wales. And given the authors that are out there, I mean, come on, this is a big thing. So yeah, authors keep writing books.
Yeah, that was for me just the hugest honor ever. I mean, I was one of those little nerdy kids who spent their playtimes in the library, and to me libraries are just I love them. They've saved me so many times in my life. They're just amazing places. So I mean, talk about sort of you know, childhood dreams coming true. I mean, the thought of being author of the month, you know, for all the Welsh libraries, that's yeah, it's a huge honor. Yeah, I'm kind of I keep sort of thinking, oh, you know, I kind of almost don't go down to the library because it feels a little bit like, oh, you know, shall I go and see? But I'm talking, actually tomorrow I'm talking to the Monmouth Library about, they've asked me if I'll do an event there to link in with this. So we'll go and celebrate a bit of joy down there. I've said I'll do some things with the local libraries here. I can't really go off traveling around the whole of Wales, but yeah, it's a huge honor. If anybody ever sees anything in a library about it, do send me a picture, because I'll just be, oh, I'm just kind of like swooning about it.
I think we've reached that point in the evening where we'd really like you to read to us, if you're willing.
Shall I read you a story?
Please. It's nearly Daniel's bedtime, so I think a story would be good.
Okay, I will read you the book. I can't necessarily show you all the pictures because it won't quite work, but you can sit back and listen, and if you've got the book already, you can read along and look at the pictures anyway. So this was what I was talking about with Grandmother Badger sitting here weaving at the beginning of the book. And I am going to read the dedication as well, because I know one of them is way past his bedtime, and that's my grandson, who was a tiny little spark that hadn't been born when I was writing this book. So for a while it had for XXX, my brightest spark of joy, and now it says for Björn, my brightest spark of joy, and for all who celebrate small beauties in their days, especially Jacqueline Honeybee, who shows us all the way. She's our very own Grandmother Badger, because she's the one who started this whole movement of celebrating small joys. So it had to be for her. Some days we can find ourselves thinking and thinking, but no ideas will come. Worries weigh heavily in our backpacks, and there seems to be no way forward. Other times we can walk along our well-trodden paths, not realizing we've stopped seeing the world around us. But then there are those moments. Something glints and catches our eye to stop us in our tracks. An idea, a solution. Something small crosses our path to make us smile. A thought, a memory, a small beauty in our day to warm our hearts. Have you ever wondered why sometimes, just sometimes, a flower inspires, or a tree, or a cloud? Why a single glance at a familiar sight lets you see it for the first time? Where do those sparks come from? This is the story of their hiding and finding. In winter, the earth slumbers and dreams. The light bringers hold the sparks of light hidden away as we snuggle safe and cozy and dream of summer's warmth. As spring gives way to summer, the bluebells ring in the foxgloves. At the midsummer solstice, as the earth dances and laughs flowers, folk gather to feast and dance and sing. Some light fires to jump for courage. Young ones play hide and seek and swim and run and jump, and their laughter flows out across the bright summer skies. Between the midsummer solstice and the beginning of the dog days, when Sirius barks forth a flame, folk stay up late into the light summer evenings, reminiscing, reflecting and telling stories, sharing joy and love. Sparks mingle in the warmth of summer's dusky shadows, those moments of joy and love flowing out and flying up, drifting and scattering as they sail the sea of summer light. All that gladness connected and condensed into sparks and set adrift on a summer's hazy air. But where do those sparks go? At the solstice, the very height of summer, when the sun rests in her nest at the top of the sky for 3 long days, Foxes begin to weave baskets from sun-filled plants, gathered and dried, ready for their tricksy task. They sit and weave in the sultry dog days of summer until the hare with the moon signals that it is time to begin. Then, out of their dens, the foxes creep, donning magical foxgloves over sooty paws. Now they are ready to collect all the sparks full of inspiration, stories, and summer joy. Grandmother Badger watches on. She has watched 1,000 lifetimes, and still she watches, stitching and sewing all she sees. The foxes carry their bright baskets full of sparks to their trickster friends. They love to play hide and seek and are eager to help scatter them all across the lands. I can see them behind me there. The earthy ones, I don't know if anybody's noticed someone in this picture. The earthy ones dig them deep down into fields and gardens. They hide them in flowers and new growth, in swathes of wheat and the first potato, ready to gladden our hearts. The watery ones swim sparks to glisten in pools and rivers, in seaside shells and pebbles ready to catch our eye, in the chatter of streams and evening sunsets on the waves. The tricksy tree climbers take them to the trees, from the tiniest windswept hawthorns to the tops of the tallest pines, where unheard secrets whisper in the wind. They hide sparks in the bark of birch and spruce, in the early spring leaves and the late autumn colours, in acorns, conkers and pine cones, ready to be put in a pocket. Yes. The night dwellers fly them up to the night skies, hiding them in stars and moons, in the vast stillness and silent glimmers, to remind us to wish and hope. Others take sparks into the world of folk. They bury them in bags and books and teapots, a small kindness, a thoughtful deed to spark a dream, a keepsake to remember. Sometimes they sneak a bit of treasure in return, because that is the way of the tricksy ones. Wise folk know to leave them a gift. The foxes and their trickster friends hide the sparks here, there, and everywhere. They hide them in tiny spaces, feathers, leaves, flower petals, butterflies, the first swallow of summer. They hide them to be a small joy in our day, or a little beauty to catch us unawares, just when we need it. A helping hand, a cup of tea with a friend, a new moon to wish upon. Some sparks wait till just the right moment to give a burst of inspiration. An idea as cunning as a fox suddenly appears, as if from nowhere. And all the while, Grandmother Badger watches, stitching and sewing all she sees. So when you have an idea, one that appears out of nowhere, as tricksy as a fox, or if you see something that makes you stop and smile, you can thank a joy bringer for their summer-filled mischief. And so, my dears, this is for you lot. All summer long, you must be sure to help by bringing laughter, fun, and joy to your days, for it is then that sparks can be created for others to find. And if you can't seem to find any small beauties in your day, why not take a walk to the hedge by the woods with a quiet heart? Look for Grandmother Badger, who will show you the way. And then I'm going to just read you the quote of "Kindled by thy bonfires, and from the same 1,000 sparks dispersed throughout the sky, which like to wandering stars about did fly." And that's from the 1616 London Midsummer Bonfires. And then you've got the lovely bit by Pam in the back. And Grandmother Badger wandering off through the book.
Oh, lovely. Now we're almost at my cocoa time, but I don't know if Daniel's been looking at the questions as they've gone through, or if there have been any questions gone through. I can't see them from here. And maybe just pick out just one or two, not forgetting you're on mute at the moment.
I have been keeping an eye on it. No questions so far as I can see. Lots and lots of lovely support, lots of wonderful messages, but no questions as such so far.
No questions. Okay.
I can see people talking about some of the things about Sirius barking the flame. The sun in her nest, by the way, is it's a Finnish folklore about the sun resting in her nest, and I just thought that was beautiful, this idea of the sun just sitting resting for 3 days for the solstice. Sorry. While you're just having a look if there's anything there, what I've been doing with the books I've been sending out from my little online shop is I got some origami paper made, and I just want to tell people, because I think it's a nice little thing you can do. And I've been putting it in with the instructions that you can fold this into a little envelope or a little box, and you can hide a small beauty in it, like a little leaf or an acorn or something like that, and give it to somebody. And that it would be a nice little way of like spreading those little small beauties and things around. So I would encourage you to have a bit of, when we leave here, is to go and have a little bit of, we can be tricksy joy bringers and spread a little bit of joy in there. Just, I would like to invite you all to just do something, whether it's like, hide a bar of chocolate on your, colleague's desk, or, put a little acorn in a little, one of my friends here, she sent me a conker once, just in an envelope, and it was just joyful, and I've got friends who send snail shells and things like that, or bits of string, and it is those little things. So I would like to challenge you all to go out and be a little joy bringer and sneak a little small beauty to someone who might need it, or just randomly leave it hanging in a tree or something.
Brilliant. I mean, yep, the world certainly needs far more little moments of joy. And Daniel, if you want to sneak a bar of chocolate on my desk, I really won't hold it against you. Karin, it's been absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed chatting. I mean, I was so nervous before this, and it's been just an absolute joy to hear you talking about the book with the same degree of excitement as you did 2 years ago when you first started telling me about it. That's carried on through, and you've created something that is a little moment of joy in itself. The book is available from today from all good bookshops, and also from Karin on her website. I know she's got copies with certain little extras that go in there with them, and also from any and every library up and down the country. It should be available. So if you don't want to, or if you can't manage to go out and buy a copy, then go out and borrow a copy, because the author still benefits from that as well. And it only remains for me to say thank you very, very so much for every one of you for coming out, or not coming out, but of joining us this evening in your numbers, and to celebrate this this wonderful day when this book finally reaches its general public. So
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's a kind of nerve-wracking thing of wondering if anybody will come and, wanting to celebrate the book. And it really is joyful to do it with so many of you there, and seeing those familiar faces and new faces. And it's just lovely. And I can see the chat now whizzing past. Now I've pushed the button because I couldn't look while I was talking, but it's just so lovely to see all these lovely comments coming up. So thank you for coming, and thank you for helping bring this little piece of joy out into the world.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, go and buy books and tell your friends. And
and Daniel now needs to push the button and send us all off to bed.
we will do a big wave goodbye to everybody. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.